So the last time that I spoke to you, you were about to make your UFC comeback, and we spoke all about the lead up to that fight, the time you had off, but also just coming back and being able to fight at the O2 Arena and the kind of significance of that. So I guess the first thing to touch up on in catching back up with you is how was the experience of fighting again and fighting in a place that has now become, like a second home to you. Well, I guess a full-time home.
Full time home, yes. I mean, it was amazing. Like after the fight, I remember we came back home and my parents-in-law just had like balloons and it said congratulations and a cake and everything, and it was just it was amazing to have that after the fight, and just to have so much, love and support around me, that there were people that I knew that it didn't really matter the outcome. They were just proud of me for being able to go through what I had, just to be back in there. And that was really reassuring, and it made it all the better that I won, of course. But yeah, just to be there, man, was unreal. It was probably one of the happiest days of my life, to be honest. Just because of everything that had happened, and just the journey that I was able to make with Dan, and the training that I was able to get, and being back in there, and it feeling so surreal, especially in London, a place that I've wanted to fight for such a long time, that I've asked for I think it was 5 years straight. So yeah, I mean, it was really awesome. It was really great, and the staff, obviously, the UFC used different staff. They use the US team staff, which this will be my first time with them, because it's my first time fighting in the US. And they used the UK team, and I didn't actually know that, but the UK team, they are incredible when it comes to like referees, the medical team, all of it. They are just on top of everything. Even the production. There's Matt Talon that helps run everything like behind the scenes, and all of those guys just work so hard, and they try to make sure that you feel very welcome, and that anything that you need, they have you covered. So that was a big, yeah, that was like really awesome as well, that whole week.
I mean, the whole night felt so important. Like obviously we've had some huge nights for UK MMA in the past, and we've had pay-per-views over here as well. But something about Leon bringing the belt home after winning it the way he did, it just felt so huge. And to me, not only because I know how much it meant to you to be back in there and to be fighting in front of the O2, but to see you walking out with Dan and Jimmy, it felt like such a great way to kick it off for the UK fans, right? Like it just felt like the perfect way to open it. One of the things that you had spoken about in the build up, I think we spoke about it as well, was the kind of the idea of having Dan in your corner is a bit like a cheat code. But you also spoke about how with that comes kind of some level of pressure to live up to his reputation in some way, because his reputation as a coach is also on the line in some kind of way.
Mm.
How was that? Because as much as you can train, I know that you guys have spent a ton of time training for that fight, but how was it actually in the moment? Because from the outside looking in, it felt very much like you wouldn't have been able to tell that that was your first fight in the UFC with that team, right? It just looked like just very coordinated and calm across the board.
Yeah, well, it was also my first time fighting with a team that I've trained with for a long time, just because the way I was living, due to a lot of different circumstances, I wasn't really able to stay with the team for a long time to where you're able to make that connection. And in those high pressure situations, when you have a minute in between rounds, you don't have a lot of time to think. Plus, as soon as you get back to your corner, you have to catch your breath a little bit. You have to, bring your heart rate down, and focus on what's happening in addition, to make the adjustments that you need to in order to get to that second round, because your opponent is also getting all these coaching and information. So in order to have that, I think that bond and that understanding, I've gotten to the point where, like, I'll be training and I'll do something and I hear Dan's voice in my head, like, oh, you should have done this and that. And that is something that I've never had before. So he can say like two words, and it'll elongate in my head to a whole paragraph, because it's something that we have spoken about before. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember when you mentioned this, and the consequences of that. So that was cool. Although, if I'm being like completely honest, in when I went back to the corner, I remember that they were like telling me something, and I kind of like blanked out. I was like, "This is so cool! I have Dan Hardy and Jimmy Wall in my corner." And I was like, "Dude, focus! Come on!"
Yeah, I mean that was like the emotion that I got just seeing the walkout. I was like, this is it just feels like this should have happened the whole time. Like the just the whole thing. Um, this isn't something that when I first messaged you about doing this interview that I expected to bring up, but it does relate to you as well because, like you said, then in your previous UFC fights, you were kind of jumping around gyms and living in different places, as we spoke about the last time that I spoke to you. But one of the things that I have seen just through paying attention to your social media and of course Dan's as well is that you're still training at different places, but it feels regimented. It's not as like nomad like as it once was for you, and this has become a really big talking point in the last like week or so, as I'm sure you know, because of the whole situation with Ian Gary and Team Renegade and all that drama, which is whatever. But you seem to have done that in terms of you've done that of training at different gyms and constantly hopping around to all these places, and now you have a team that's settled, but you're still able to go to all these different gyms, and like whether it's Renegade, GB Top Team, and of course out in New York at the moment, like you're still able to pick all these different people's brains and get all these different experiences. Like how big of a difference is it being able to do that, but knowing that you've always got the same team with you in order to guide you through going to all of these different places?
Man, I just wish I could just have everybody that's helped me out in my corner. Just have the whole army of people from Joby Clayton, have Leon Edwards help me, Fabian Edwards has helped me at GB Top Team, Brad and Ash, like they've helped me over here at Henzo's. Just so many different coaches that they're able to like pour it out. But I still have, because I have Dan, it's kind of like this foundation that although I'm learning different things, it's still it helps it not be scattered, right? Because you can learn from different places, but I feel like a big part that's very tricky is to learn how to apply it to yourself and to your own game. Like it's not just like I'm going somewhere and I'm having this information and I'm going somewhere else and I'm having that. It's I'm going somewhere with Dan, that's my head coach, and that's is speaking to them and they're being so helpful and just very understanding of where I'm at and what I need. And they're helping me with those specific points in my game, but that's still within what I need to do in order to fight so adequately, I guess.
Yeah. Um, like I mean, you mentioned so many people that we could easily just dive into each one of those,
I know.
those coaches and talk about what they've added and stuff like that. But I suppose to summarize this training camp so far, now that we're a couple of weeks out, like, how has that been going to those different places and kind of seeing their culture? Because not to bring it back to the Ian Gary thing too much, because I just what is it's whatever. But that was kind of the I think the interesting takeaway of that whole drama was about Team Renegade and the ethics of their team, right? It's such a family team, and if you're around them, I was at Cage Warriors this past weekend and seeing those guys, but also GB Top Team and all these gyms that such units, but then also so welcoming for people like yourself to go in there and train with them. Like, how has that been? And then also New York. I imagine, were you always planning New York? Is it because of Dan that you're out there, or were you always planning to go?
Um, well, no, like planning to go to New York and seeing what that actually entitles is quite difficult. But we were actually here before, and we got in some training during the PFL, the competition. So we were here for about 2 weeks, and we got some really nice training, and it made such a difference and such a jump in my game that we were definitely thinking about coming back. But it turns out that in order to fight in Texas, all your medicals need to be done in the U.S. They don't accept medicals from different countries. So I had to fly to the U.S. earlier anyway, to get those done. And the New York is kind of on the halfway point between now and between here and Austin. So I just thought it was great. I'm actually getting some medicals done tomorrow, just for that. And because it was so incredible the last time, we thought for sure we're gonna have to come out here again. to the point where Dan was like, maybe we could find a way to like live here half the time. It's training's so good. Just between both these, well, of the three of these places, it's awesome.
Yeah. I
And
suppose
and to
to
and to go to your point about the how the environment is at Team Renegade, man, I love going there. I have trained in many places and I have done training because I need to do training. When I know I'm on today to go to Renegade, I just wake up more excited. It's kind of like a field trip day. You have Joby who just like has like jokes and really he makes sure everybody is safe. He makes sure everybody understand his point. But it's not like if you don't get his point, he's like mean about it or something. He just finds a different, more creative way to explain it to you, and he gives a lot of care to each and every individual. And the team itself is like that with everybody. Like people get if you have a fight coming up, they come around and they come help you, and that is just is so great, like they stay after training to help you out, and all they ask is for respect in return, and I don't feel like that is something unattainable
yeah.
or that should be difficult to have.
Yeah. I know that you spoke about how there was a couple of different cards that you were originally trying to get on before we come across December 2nd in Texas. However,
Mhm.
I think if you were going to land on one of these fight nights that maybe doesn't have a sort of location that was catching your eye, right? Because I know that was it Brazil that you were aiming for, and then obviously everyone wants to fight at Madison Square Garden, so that one's difficult. But um, eventually ending up with Texas, of all the cards that don't have that location significance, I think this is one of the better ones you could have got because not only is it in front of a crowd and not at the Apex, but also it's like one of the most fight night cards I can remember in recent times, which is pretty crazy. To talk about the opponent actually for a minute, Jamey-Lyn Horth. I am sure that you can relate to this as somebody who does the picks podcast with Dan. It is so hard to keep up with who is in and out of the UFC these days that
Mm.
I saw the name and was like, I don't know anything about her. I know that she obviously won her UFC debut, but in terms of when you got the opponent and checking out her fights and things like that, what were the first things that jumped out to you about her style, but also this fight and the way that you would approach it?
Well, when I first got contacted, actually, they didn't have a location. I was messaged by the matchmaker that said it was in Vegas, and then I had some people say it was in Minneapolis because that was like coming about, and then other people saying it was in Orlando. So I'm like, all right, I need to get flights to the U.S. somewhere, and it's not like it's nearby. So, yeah, it took a while, but I'm really glad it's in Austin. It's a wicked location, a really cool place, and a place that I've not been before. So that was pretty awesome. And I mean, Jamie is such a tough opponent. She's really tall. She's very hardworking. Very rangy, very intelligent as well. When she fights, you can see she makes constant adjustments in the fight, and that's something that's extremely dangerous. And she won the LFA belt. She's had difficulties. I feel like she hasn't fought more because it's hard to get fights as a female, if I'm being very honest. One of my training partners, Lexi, is currently going through that issue where you're ready and you've been training and you've been doing all this work, and then the event doesn't they don't get you for the fight, or the girl that you were going to fight has an injury, or this happens, and there's so many different things that I don't think we're adequately seeing the level or the amount of females that are out there that are so talented and so skilled, just because it's so difficult to get that opponent and that next level. Because for by kind of like observation, women don't have as many fights as men do before they get into the UFC. So it's a little bit like you're like, okay, I just need like 5 or 6 wins before I get there, but getting those 5 or 6 fights can be such a challenge within itself. that I feel like that's kind of a bit where she was at. I feel like she had the level already. It was just a term, a thing of finding the fights and not having it canceled and all of that. But I mean, she's very tough and she's very game.
Well, I'm looking forward to the fight. The reason that I'm kind of putting a cap on the fight is because there's something else I want to speak to you about. Which, if it doesn't end up happening, I will just cut this entire part from the from the interview. But whilst we were out at Cage Wars this past weekend, we were kind of told, kind of not, that Chanel Dyer, who you know very well, is going to be fighting on Aries towards
Yes.
the end of this year. It hasn't been officially announced, so we will try and wait until the news is out, or we can just clip this part and remove it and post it when it gets announced.
Oh
All right.
no, I've said it in another interview, so don't
I,
worry.
you
If
know what?
anything, you just
I heard from someone who said they heard from you, so I was kind of
okay, yeah.
taking it back
Oops.
to the source. But either way, we'll probably, we'll wait just in case. We don't want to annoy the people
Okay.
at Aries by posting it everywhere and then being like, we spoke to the person who leaked it, so we'll
Yeah.
we'll just leave it. But
Nah, I'm sure they'll be fine. Plus, I'm the commentator, so what are they gonna do? Fire me?
well, I don't know if there would be any, maybe apart from Chanel or Brad or Ash, there might not be anyone better to talk to about Chanel fighting on there because, I mean, I haven't really thought about this before, but not only are you the commentator for the promotion she's going to fight on, train with her at GB Top Team, but also she is signed to the PFL Europe, which Dan is the head of fighter operations for. So
Yeah.
it all comes together perfectly. So everyone's excited about Chanel. If you're in the know in UK MMA, everyone's excited to see her. And I was hoping we were going to get her on that PFL card in Dublin, but obviously that isn't happening. But I think Aries is obviously a great step for her to take in. Like you said, it's not easy getting fights when you're a female fighter, especially when you have the pedigree of Chanel Dyer. People are not
Oh my
putting their
goodness.
hands up. um
Yeah.
so talk to me about training with Chanel and also I guess what you're expecting to see from her when she comes over to Aries.
Well, she's fighting on Aries, but she's still fighting
Yeah.
by the PFL. So it's like a PFL fight being shown on Aries, and man, Chanel's like, well, she's the president, but she needs. It's just about having those fights, so to get that recognition from other people. But man, she has the skill. She's fast, she's sharp, she's talented, she moves well, she's great on the camera, she speaks well, and it's just everything about her is something that can get you excited because she's vicious, and you can see that like enjoyment when she fights, that she's looking for just the most vicious way to end your night. And that's kind of like that's what you want to see in a fight, right? It's not okay if the fight goes to a decision, all right, obviously everybody I feel like is a bit understanding that the other person trained really hard to fight you too. But with her, it's just like you can see that there's something special about her, and her work ethic is brilliant. She's always there. She's always on time. She trains really hard, and she doesn't miss a session. And you can see that determination and that drive in her, which makes her just so dangerous and just evolving so quickly in all aspects of the sport. Like we know that she's a phenomenal striker, but then we saw her in Polaris getting a win with that. So we can see her not like stepping outside of her comfort zone and not being like, oh, I'm just going to be a striker in MMA, but somebody who is planning to be very well rounded in all skill sets. And that's something that, man, if that doesn't excite you as a prospect, I don't know what does.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Aries has done some fantastic things, but if you want to get people to tune in, the promise of having Chanel Dyer on a card
Mm.
is like, you might as well tune in now, because if you don't watch her now, you'll be watching her later anyway. Like, it's one of those where you might as well get on the train early. I think that's about it. So thank you so much for your time, and of course all the best for fight night. So glad that you've been able to get another fight this year, because like you said, it's not easy. But this is shaping up to be a great year for both yourself and for Dan as well. Not only with you going 2-0 and the comeback, Coach Dan going 2-0 in the UFC. So yeah, incredible stuff. And yeah, like I said, thank you for your time.
No, thank you very much. And I'm sorry this lighting has turned out to be so weird during the
Uh,
phone interview.
it is
Like the
pitch
sun's
black
been
in the
coming up and
UK.
down.
So
Okay.
it
I'm
trying
just
to get
making
this
everybody in the UK jealous.
trying to get this room to not look like a cave is so difficult. So I'm sure your lighting still looks better than it looks in here because yeah, it's a nightmare. But yeah. Yeah, all the best and we'll catch up with you soon.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem. See you later.
Bye bye.